My name's Anan. I'm a graphic designer, and I have a background in art and visual culture. I graduated from the School of the Art Institute with a master's degree in the Visual and Critical Studies program, and something that I've been working on stemmed out of that class, or the program actually. It's kind of this archive project where I am basically archiving objects within the Palestinian community that survived from Palestine. And what prompted me to work on this or pursue this project was, so my dad's family, they left in 1967 during the war, and my dad never wanted to leave, but, knowing about what happened in 1948, there was a lot of talk at the time that, it could be something similar, and my grandparents, fearing for her family's life, they left, and they walked several miles to Jordan, and when I had asked him about, if he had anything from there that he had in Palestine, what do you have? And one of the only things that he actually had was an Arabic-English dictionary.
Oh, wow.
And the dictionary itself is interesting because when you flip through it, there's all these words marked, and you can tell that he didn't really use it when he was in Palestine. He used it when he came here because he, had to learn English, and it's kind of this artifact of assimilation, the way that I see it. When you look through all of the items all of the words that he marked, it's very interesting, and you could tell that some of it was probably because he felt that he had to explain his background or what was going on in Palestine, because a lot of the words that were marked were kind of violent words, like obliterate, things like that. And another thing about it being kind of an artifact of assimilation is that when you look at the beginning where he writes his name, he writes his actual real name, but then he writes Charles. And that's obviously not his name, but when he started going to school here and they would ask him his name, well, it sounded really foreign to him, foreign to everybody else, so they're like, we don't have a Charles in this classroom, we'll just call you Charles. And the fact that he wrote that name on his book, it's kind of funny, but also sad, because, maybe things are a little different now, I don't know, it's kind of not really still, but, nobody put emphasis on trying to pronounce somebody else's name. And it's Hatem. It's not like it's a difficult name or anything. So from there, that project, I started thinking about, well, how much were people actually able to bring that they've had from when they grew up, or from, their home in Palestine. And I just started, talking to people in the community. And one of the other reasons for this project, the main reason, is when it comes to colonization, destroying, people's heritage and culture and artifacts and all of these things is basically how, I think colonization can succeed, right? Because you're trying to erase an entire group of people's history. And so one of the reasons for doing this is to stop that from happening, as being one of the vehicles to stop that from happening. So one of the things that I wanted to focus on was kind of people like myself, because I didn't know that my dad had any of these things, and I didn't think to even ask him about any of this stuff when I was younger, and it kind of made me realize how I am connected, and I'll always be connected to Palestine, but also very disconnected because I've never lived there. My dad doesn't live there anymore, and most of my family doesn't live there anymore. And so I wanted to connect with people that were younger, whose parents it was that left, or were forced to leave, or whatever, or are refugees, because this was also kind of a way to see how disconnected and fragmented we are, but how we actually still stay connected, even though we're could be considered far removed. And so through emailing, a lot of social media, just talking in person and finding people and asking about their experiences, and if their relatives or somebody that they know, or their grandparents or their parents, if anything they had that survived from Palestine. And some interesting things. One of the funny things is finding someone and finding them through Twitter. I never met them, but I know a lot of people from the community. I have chatted with them before, and when I set up an interview, and he wasn't living in Chicago at the time, he was in some other state. And,
so you set up this interview?
I set up an interview via Skype.
Okay.
And asked him a variety of questions about, if Palestine means anything to him, and how does he feel if he feels connected or removed, and what artifacts do they have that's from Palestine, if they actually have anything at all, because I have interviewed people and I've included them also in the project that don't have anything, because I think that's important as well, because they all have stories as well. It's not just the stories of the objects, it's the stories of the people themselves. And it turned out that during this interview we found out that his father and my father lived in the same house together in Jordan.
Wow.
They left around the same time in 1967, and before they came to the United States, they ended up living in the same house. So my dad knows his dad, but I didn't know him, and I didn't know his son, and I didn't know any of these people, and it's always a very small world when it comes to the Arab community, and especially the Palestinian community. But I found out right then and there exactly how small it was. Well, they're from the same town, so which is Bitunia, and all of Bitunia is practically in Chicago now. But and some other interesting things are, a large metal pan used for cooking, because cooking is very, very huge part of Palestinian culture. So it's just interesting that that's one of the objects that you're packing up all your stuff to leave, and that's one of the things that you decide to take with you. And a lot of people who were forced to leave in 1948 have keys to their houses, and this one individual that I interviewed, their family has the key to their house that they've mounted on a plaque that says, and ought to be this is always this will always be their home, or whatever. And it's to do that seems like a memory, it's a memory that you're engraving and you're putting together, but there's still always that hope that you'll take it off that plaque and go back home. So it's a whole variety of different things. I mean, from keychains to books and cooking pots.
Wow, that's incredible.
One of the things that I mentioned before was that right, Palestine's currently being colonized, and it's not just like a physical colonization. There's colonization of the mind and your culture and heritage. And when you're in the United States, you might feel pressure to assimilate and be completely disconnected with your culture. And one of the things that I think this project does is show that even if we are disconnected, that we're still kind of a community, and that we'll always be connected in some way or another. But I mean, ultimately, the goal of this project is to have not a physical housing of the artifacts, because I'm not going to take people's artifacts away from them to do that, but a full documentation of these stories, of these objects, and it would be hosted on a website that other people can go look at. And this is proof that all of these stories and all of these experiences are real and have happened, and it's firsthand testimonies, and these are images, these are the objects that people have had with them. I mean, nobody just goes and engraves a key and says, oh yeah, this is from my house. No, this is real. This is the key from my house from back then when it was stolen from me. And so I just want this to be, it's like an actual archive that kind of resists full-on colonization, and is a way that people who like myself are very disconnected. We were born in the United States, we grew up here, have their stories out there, and let people know that they exist, and have these objects that were taken from their families and that still exist as well. So